Alright, since Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's ended about a month ago, it's time to make a list of my top 5 personal favorite duels in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. And I'm not doing top 10 because there's a lot of one-episode duels that are just whatever to me. Like usual, my criteria is how memorable the duel is, the character moments, in some ways the build-up to the duel, and of course sometimes the back and forth between the characters. Now before I begin, what I think about Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's is that I'm a little mixed about it. I do like the premise, and I don't mind it being kid appealing or it being slice of life, but it is a little awkward in some cases, and sometimes the story really gets me confused a little bit, but I overall did have fun with Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. That's just what I think of it, but in that, let's begin. So first off, on my number 5 spot, Yuga versus the Lukemin. I like this one because like usual, the back and forth is great. And basically it's another protagonist versus rival duel, kind of, except the rival is been brainwashed. Seeing Fusion Draggius was cool again, especially with the Lukemin summoning his second fusion, and it's also kind of fun to see Luke's backstory about creating his own manga, and especially the cosplay going around, it was a little funny, although I did not really like that big cosplay part with the whole entire gang. I saw that as a complete waste of time and it was just meant to stall. Until Yuga's fusion arrives and then he could finally make his first fusion summon. That's the main part I really didn't like, is that huge stall of time just for the main protagonist to get his BS power. I mean, yeah, it's cool to see the main protagonist and rivals evolve ace monsters go up against each other, but seriously. But another disappointment I kind of have is we did not get to see Yuga do a maximum summon, at least that we could get a maximum versus fusion. I think that would have been a cool idea. But overall, I did have fun with this duel. Number 4, Yuga versus Roa, their first duel. First off, this is the introduction of Roa, this being his very first duel, and seeing one of the main characters slash rival characters to a protagonist is always nice to see. We also got Roa's backstory, which will also include Roman, because they're cousins after all, and an explanation on how Yuga got Seven's Road Magician. And one of the things I kind of find funny is that they were trying to ban a card in the middle of a duel, just for Altus to randomly show up just to explain that the card is legal. And then as the duel continued, a lot more back and forth, especially with their main ace monsters going up against each other, and Yuga summoning more of his aces. It was still kind of predictable that Yuga was gonna win, but overall this duel is also very fun, and also I kind of like Roa's theme. And then to number 3, Yuga versus Altus, the last duel of the series. When you think an irrelevant character suddenly becomes relevant. First off, I never expected Altus to become the final boss of the series. I did see him as a test stone for our heroes, but not as the final boss of the series. It was also very nice to see Altus' actual deck, that also being a 7's Road deck, which actually makes pretty much a mirror match against Yuga. Technically, because his deck focuses more on Dark 7's Road Magician rather than a whole 7's Road archetype, but it's nice to see Altus' actual deck. Another thing I really like is basically this duel kind of references Yuga against Zone, because Yuga is using the aces of the other characters. And luckily all of them are generic, so at least he could actually summon all of them. And it was also nice to see all their main ace monsters for one last time. Unfortunately, we never got to see Altus perform a maximum summon because that would have been awesome. And as the final boss, you should be using every kind of summoning method at the time. So very disappointed that he didn't perform a maximum summon, but he did perform a fusion summon, which the monster looked pretty cool. And I also liked that the last ace monster that Yuga summoned from his team was Luke's ace monster, that being Draggius, which of course works pretty well as the protagonist rival dynamic, and also the fusion between the protagonist and rival, which we haven't seen that for a really long time, believe it or not. We got Dragon Master Knight and Duel Monsters, and then technically Rainbow Neos if you want to count that. But in 5Ds, if you want, you can count Shooting Quasar, but then series after that, there was kinda no friendship fusion going along. Although still in my opinion, I think this monster should have summoned against Yuga Goha instead, because Luke was taking over for Yuga in that duel, and that could have symbolized the bond between the two, while this final ace monster against Altus, which was the final boss, should have been the whole team's ace monster fusion. I think that would have just been a cool concept. Now, one thing I really didn't like is right when Yuga was about to do the final blow and it looks like he was gonna lose, the duel gets interrupted. And then not only that, we kind of get the worst ceremonial duel possible because it's literally the last episode, and the big final boss duel hasn't even finished yet because they were planning to continue it in the second half, so it was obviously rushed out. And it was good to see Yuga finally beat Luke after Luke beat him twice, but I really think this duel should have happened right after this big final boss duel. And then after that, Yuga pretty much goes after Altus and finishes off the game and basically sacrifices himself. I never really seen a protagonist actually try to kill himself this way. Although I do kind of find it funny that it's in space with mech suits, but hey, it's fine. A unique setting is always fine with me. Overall, it's a really fun duel and something that you will never be expecting as a final boss. Number 2, Yuga vs Nail, second round. Yes, another duel that involves Yuga because most of these duels are actually good with Yuga. But anyway, Nail did defeat Yuga one time, so there was going to be build up for this, especially when Nail wrecked him in the previous round with a new summoning mechanic he created called Maximum Summon, so obviously the main protagonist is eventually going to have one to counter back. And it was also nice to see Nail's Maximum Monster without being the silhouette. And I really like the design, it's a very godlike dragon. And of course the back and forth against Nail's Maximum Monster is actually pretty nice as well, to build up to the cliffhanger at the ending to Yuga summoning his own Maximum Monster. And technically it's not his own Maximum Monster, it represents his whole team with Luke, Gakuto, and Roman. And then we get our big first Maximum Showdown. And then we go further back and forth here until Nail shuffles back Yuga's Maximum Monster, forcing Yuga to use Plan B with his SEVENS Road cards, to Yuga relying on luck to draw back all his pieces of his Maximum Monsters to perform Maximum Summon again, which of course will be delivering the final blow at that point. And right when Yuga is using the last effect of his Maximum Monster to deliver the final blow, I really like the opening theme inserted here, something we didn't really have from the past series since 5Ds. And then at the end of the duel, I really like how Nail was at the same situation as the main team, both at risk with their accounts getting deleted. That was something I never expected, but overall it's a really cool back and forth duel. And now, before I go to my number 1, like usual, honorable mentions, and since this is a top 5 list, my 3 honorable mentions. And I'm gonna be very honest, some of these are just here because of matchups, because they're pretty much generic as single episode duels. First off, we got Nail vs Asuna, a battle between two antagonists for certain arcs, although it would have been nice if Asuna had her own Maximum Monster against Nail, because she did use a Maximum Monster but it disappeared. It would have just been nice to see another Maximum Showdown. Luke vs Roa, another rival versus rival duel of a protagonist, and it's always nice to see two of the protagonist's rivals going up against each other. And then one that nearly made it to the list but wasn't as good as I remember it, Yuga and Luke versus Yuga Goha. You would expect this duel to build up to something for another rematch, but that didn't happen. This was basically the big finale duel for Yuga Goha, and Yuga Goha, for being a big villain, kinda has a weird design deck in my opinion. But it was nice that Luke can get another spotlight as being a hero, and performing his first Maximum Summon was also very nice. Too bad it wasn't his own Maximum cards, but it was still nice to see him perform Maximum Summon. And I really always like it when other characters use other characters' cards, usually when the rival uses a protagonist's cards or the other way around, because symbolism reasons. Finally, to number 1, Luke vs Yuga, 51 to 52. This duel was eventually going to happen again because Yuga did lose to Luke for the first time, but what's really interesting is how the roles seem to be reversed here. Luke is on the right side while Yuga's on the left side. Usually the right side contains the protagonist while the left side is the main challenger. So it was really funny that they put Luke on the right side, making people think that he was probably the protagonist written for the episode. And technically he was. Although I would have preferred it to be swapped around so it could have been a little more surprising right there, because putting Luke in the hero section makes it look like he was gonna win. But we wouldn't know until the duel actually finishes, and usually in this big finale of a tournament, the protagonist actually wins. Which actually took me by surprise that Luke actually won against Yuga, because this was a big finale tournament. Another reason why it's on my number 1. But to the duel itself, the back and forth was amazing. Sure, it was still a disadvantage for Luke to not have a maximum monster yet, but he still overcome it, which shows how strong Luke is, and also, Luke never saw Yuga taking him seriously in the very first duel. So that was pretty much a big win for him to go up against a maximum monster and defeat it. And speaking of the first duel, I really like how this duel also referenced Yuga breaking on their first duel as well. But anyway, to continue off, I really like the huge back and forth, especially with everything they got. Both players summoning their 3 main aces practically. It's nice to see the 3 Draggius together, especially going up against Yuga's 3 aces. And then the one big final turn where it looks like Yuga was set up to win, Luke summons back his Draggius and just turns it around and does the final blow. Very shocking at the time, since this was, like I said, a tournament finale between a protagonist and rival, in a rematch where usually the protagonist wins. My only disappointment is how it kinda got referenced when they decided to swap the roles around. Putting Luke on the right side kinda spoiled it a little bit. But in that, I think this is the best duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. So that's it for my top 5 Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s duels. What do you guys think of them? What other duels would you include on the list? And if you were to put a top 10, what other duels would you add in? And what do you guys think about Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s overall? I know there's mixed feelings about Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, and that kind of includes me, but I'm not their target audience. I don't mind being more slice of life and kid appealing, and it was kind of unfortunate that Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s kind of ended early just for Go Rush, because I could say the story could have been a little better in some cases, but I do overall kind of like it. Still very mixed about it though. But other than that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.